Welcome. It's it's lovely to see you again, and it's wonderful as always to be here. My voice is a little bit scratchy tonight. I had some bit of laryngitis during the week, but hopefully it should hold. And if not, then the silence is probably better than the talking anyway. So as extra people join, um, they'll be on mute automatically. Excuse me. And as usual, just feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, or you can use the chat box as well if you'd like. Well, let's just start by moving attention. So I'm just going to start by making sure I've got the mute settings on properly. Yeah, okay, beautiful. So let's just start by shifting attention from that continual string of thoughts that demands your attention so often. And just draw that attention back. And start to notice what's behind your eyes. So start looking inward and noticing what it is that's watching this whole show. So just draw that attention back. So that you're noticing what's back here, what's behind the eyeballs, behind the retina, some people say. Just pull your attention back there and just notice. Just ask yourself, what is it that's watching this whole show, watching this unfolding of events, of thoughts, of sensations? And as you do that, you may find it useful to just notice the sensation of the breath coming and going, the in-breath and the out-breath. And as you experience that, keep drawing attention back to the awareness that's watching. And it almost feels like there's a physical space there behind the eyes where this awareness is sitting at the moment, where it's viewing from. So just sense into that space. And just allow attention to rest. There's no doubt your whole day, your whole life, attention has been out, running around, chasing good experiences, running away from bad ones, trying to collect positives and avoid negatives. And that's why we've come here, because to do that is to feel stressed, to suffer, to have difficulty. But just for this hour, just for tonight, just let your attention rest in your own self. And however much activity is there in the background, however much thought is arising in consciousness, just leave it alone just for the moment. And as the breath comes in, just allow your attention to sink back into that space, into that awareness behind your eyes. And just to rest there. Because this is the whole purpose of being here, is to rediscover your own self. Your own self, which has no shape, no color, no form. It's just pure awareness. Just pure energy. And so there's no process that's happening. You're not on a journey. You're not improving. Because there's no one to be on a journey. There's no one who could improve. There's no one there when you look back into that awareness. So while your mind, while the mind might tell you, the awareness, that you're getting better at this mindfulness thing, you're getting worse at it. There's no such thing to get better at. It's just one method for returning to self, returning to your self-awareness. So as the breath comes in, just let that attention drop into the space, into the awareness. That you can sense behind the eyes, and that you can sense in the body also. When you feel the body, you'll notice that it's totally empty. It's just space. And some sensations, some thoughts arise, are born out of that space, out of that awareness. And then they dissolve back into it. And of course, because those thoughts even arise, are born out of that awareness, and they must be made of the same stuff. It's all just what we could call emptiness, taking on a shape, taking on a form, and then going back to just being this pure awareness again. But just leave these words alone. Take your attention back to your own self, back inside. And just allow me to be silent for a few minutes, so we can all just rest in that space. You might find it helpful to use breath awareness to keep your attention inside the body, resting in that space. You stay attentive to each breath that comes and goes. You might find it easier to just sink into that space, to just rest there. There's nothing you need to do. No practice towards any goal. This is just a time to stop and to become reacquainted with yourself. This whole quest that we call mindfulness practice or spiritual journey or whatever is itself an invention of the mind. It's a story that we tell ourselves. Because all stories depend upon this I, this self-image, this imagined person. But look inside now and tell me if you can find a person in there. If you can find a separate self. There's no one. So this whole journey is imagination. It's not real because there's no one to have that journey. Knowing that as you do, just allow your attention to rest in the space. There's no time in your world either. There's only the idea of time, the story of time, which is also reliant upon the self-image, the story of the imagined person. Because how could there be time unless there's someone there who experienced the past? Someone there who can keep track, keep score. So as you rest in that space, in that silence, that imagined self will dissolve on its own. It's just an idea anyway. It's just a belief structure. And as that dissolves, the belief in time will dissolve with it. And so we're left with no person and no time. So there can be no one to go on a quest or a spiritual journey. And without time, the journey's not possible. You're always just here, just now, as just awareness. That's all. But there is still a structure that we can use to help the ideas, the idea of the self and the idea of time, to dissolve more quickly, so to speak. And the structure, which we call mindfulness, is as simple as taking attention to the breath, feeling the breath, using that breath awareness to draw your attention back into this empty, aware space inside. And once your attention is inside, just gently explore and see what you find. See if you can find a person anywhere. And the mind will say, yes, but I exist. I have a past. I have a future. These things really happened. Maybe they did. But your entire so-called past, if you look for it, only exists in imagination now. It only exists as some pictures that arise and disappear in this empty space. So even what was said 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, what you did an hour ago, or even a second ago, is now no more than imagination. And the same applies to future. It's just imagined. So if time and if self, the self-image is imagined, then what's real? Well, this is what I'm pointing to, is the only real, stable element of this world is your own self. Not the self that arises in thought, self-image. Because even those thoughts are watched, are observed, are noticed by you. You can verify this very easily. Everything that you experience is watched, listened to, smelled, experienced by you. And we're so caught up in trying to manipulate the experiences, the happenings out there and in here, that we miss our own self. So as the body breathes in, just let attention sink back and rest in your own self. And just explore this inner space with your awareness, with your attention. The more time that you spend just resting, just exploring, the more you'll sense how vast and empty and alive this space inside is. So feel that aliveness. Feel that dynamic stillness. Because it's from here, from this peaceful, stable space, that you watch as everything comes and goes. So the thoughts themselves are no problem. But it's the belief in the separate self that gives these thoughts their power. So let's hold that attention inside a little longer. And just explore what we're referring to when we say I all the time. We're referring, of course, to the body, the physical. And you know that this changes all the time. That this body is a different, completely different one every few years. It's entirely different than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. And when we say I, we refer to the conditioning, the past history, which we can see from this place is pure imagination. And there's the imagined future for me, for this self-image, my hopes, my dreams, my fears. And from this place, we can see that that's imaginary also. Of course it is. And finally, there's a set of beliefs, the core of this self-image, beliefs about who I am or who I think I am. And that, of course, comes from that conditioning. But identifying with those thoughts and beliefs reinforces them and strengthens them. So all that we have when we explore this inner self, when we explore from this inner self, is the body, which isn't you, and the thoughts, which aren't you either. So anything that you can observe is not you. You are the observer of all those things. So if you sit and keep following the breath back, keep dropping attention into the space, then you'll see that this is fact. You'll see that this isn't imagination. In fact, it's the only thing that's not imagined in your whole life so far. And when you see that, this false self, this belief in a false self will go on its own. You don't need to get rid of the belief. It's just like believing that the earth is flat and then going up into space and seeing it for yourself. As soon as you see it, the belief, the previous belief disappears. It can't be supported anymore. And that's what this process, if it's a process, is. It's just moving into a space from which you can see what's real and from which you can see what's not real as false. And that's all. So I want to read a little something and then see if you've got any questions or comments. This is from the book I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj. He says, there will be no end to it because there is no such thing as peace of mind. Mind means disturbance. Restlessness itself is mind. So there's no peace of mind, he's saying. Examine closely and you will see that the mind is seething with thoughts. It may go blank occasionally, but it does it for a time and reverts to its usual restlessness. A becalmed mind is not a peaceful mind. You say you want to pacify your mind. Is he who wants to pacify the mind himself peaceful? Don't you see the contradiction? For many years you sought peace of mind. You could not find it because a thing that is essentially restless cannot be at peace. So he's saying, whenever the mind is there, in itself that means that thought is arising, there's movement, there's restlessness. When thought stops, we say there's peace of mind, but actually the mind is not there. It's dissolved, it's disappeared for the moment. The self does not need to be put to rest. Okay? The self does not need to be put to rest. So this is what I'm saying. You don't need to become peaceful. It is not at peace. It is peace itself. Only the mind is restless. So I often say who you are is peace. It's not, peace isn't something that you develop. It's something that you notice has always been there. That you notice is your nature. Only the mind is restless. All it knows is restlessness, with its many modes and grades. The pleasant are considered superior, and the painful are discounted. What we call progress is merely a changeover from the unpleasant to the pleasant. And many people experience this with mindfulness, that their thoughts become less troublesome. And we call that progress, but the mind is still the same. It's just becoming a little bit kinder to you. But changes by themselves cannot bring us to the changeless. For whatever has a beginning must have an end. So anything that arises is going out. The real, the self, does not begin. It only reveals itself as beginningless and endless. So there's no time. All-pervading, all-powerful, the immovable prime mover, timelessly changeless. So I know I go on about it, but I really want you to grasp this, that the one who talks about progress and trying to get somewhere, when we get into the depths of this practice, is not actually, that one's not there, is not in charge anymore. So there's no progress that you can make. There's no movement that can happen. The only thing that moves is the attention is moving from thoughts, from the projections, from the mind, back into the self, back into this empty space, and back into noticing yourself as the watcher, as the observer of all this. So that's the only step we take in our practice, is we don't step forwards and make progress, we step backwards and notice what is. And that's it. We just stay in that, and everything takes care of itself. It's really simple. Did anyone have a question or a comment, suggestion? And if you do, you have to find a way to unmute yourself, or wave and I'll unmute you.
Oh, you can hear me? Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you, Jen. I'll get you in a minute.
I wasn't sure. I didn't know at the start that it was because I was late coming in, so I didn't really check it. I'm glad that it was muted though, because you would have heard my dog trying to sit in my lap for about half of that. Half of this whole session. He has not given up. He has persisted till he sat in my lap until he's gone asleep, and I thought if I try to keep him away, he'll keep coming back. So I just had to let him sit there.
It's a good tip.
Didn't disturb anybody? Did it disturb anyone?
No. It's quite cute.
Right. Cute for him. I like that passage you've just read, though. Parts of that, the restlessness is there, but there's something about that's your mind. But when there's peace, it's that the mind dissolves. But the restlessness is your mind anyway. It's sort of like, I don't know. When you were reading it, it just made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I can't explain it so well. Woken up.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll just mute you for a sec, Jen. In Zen, they call it no mind, and that's the, well, it's not a state, but that's what their practice is aimed at bringing you into, is this state of no mind where you step back into that awareness, and the thought can still continue in the background, but attention is in that awareness. So yeah, it's because everyone starts by wanting to calm the mind, but as he's saying, it's the nature of mind is restlessness. Do you want to say something, Ian?
Yes. In a way, it's surprising that the inner body's quiet, considering the different cells are meant to sort of have a personality of their own, which is what some biologists say.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm not a biologist, but when you take attention inside, you can sense that there's this energy that's the creative energy of the universe is obviously in all of us, and there's trillions of cells, and the science on the body is pretty amazing. Like our bodies we're about 10% human, and we're 90% bacteria, they're saying now. So even most of what you call me is actually these other organisms, these other little living things that make up your body. And even, look within the cells, they're 99.9% empty. It's just the atoms and the subatomic particles vibrate so fast that we look solid, but we're actually not. We're actually this vast kind of emptiness. So I like that idea, Ian, of every cell almost having this potential, this creativity, this almost personality, we might call it, of being able to be creative itself, and then somehow this world kind of emerges that kind of functions. It's pretty miraculous, really. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, that was really nice. Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed that, and thanks for bearing with my voice. I should be back to normal next week, hopefully. And otherwise, I'll pop the recording on YouTube in a few days, and aim to be back next week. And I hope to see you then. And feel free to contact in between. And thanks for joining me.